Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Gessel, and I'm the Director of Public Programs at Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco. MoAD is a contemporary art museum, and our exhibitions and programming inspire learning through the global lens of the African diaspora. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the challenging circumstances we are all in, and I hope everyone in the audience today is safe and healthy. MoAD stands in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. We honor and mourn the senseless murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, Casey Goodson Jr., and Andre Hill. We grieve for so many others who have lost their lives at the hands of state-sanctioned violence and racial injustice, including those whose names we do not know. As this list continues to grow, MoAD will continue to say their names, as our commitment to honoring the victims and to attaining true racial justice is unwavering. As many of us are settlers, immigrants, or descendants of those forcefully brought to this continent, our institutions were founded upon exclusions and erasures of the indigenous peoples on whose land we are located. With deep respect, MoAD acknowledges that even in virtual space, we reside on unceded native lands and thank the indigenous people of the Bay Area who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. I welcome you tonight to MoAD Online and to the program series African Diaspora Film Club, presented in partnership with Black Public Media and with this evening's program co-presented by Priority Africa Network. Our host, Cornelius Moore, is the co-director of California Newsreel, the 52-year-old social issue nonprofit film distribution and production company. He is also an independent film curator specializing in works from and about the Black world. Modeled after a book club, we expect that you will have already viewed the film when you join us for the discussion. If you haven't already seen the film, please stick around. We just can't guarantee that we won't have any spoilers. I want to thank everyone here today who's joined us, with special appreciation for those who have donated to the museum during this pandemic. We would not be able to produce this programming without your support. Today, we are very excited to discuss the award-winning documentary, Softie. And we're thrilled to have joining us for the discussion the subject of the film, Boniface Mwangi, and the writer and director, Sam Soko. Boniface Mwangi is a Kenyan photojournalist, activist, and political candidate. He is known for his images of the post-election violence that hit Kenya in 2007-2008. In 2008 and 2010, Mwangi won the CNN African Photojournalist of the Year award. And in 2017, he formed Ukweli Party and was a candidate for Member of Parliament in the 2017 Kenya general elections. He was also cited as one of the top 100 most influential Africans by New African magazine in 2020. Sam Soko is a film director and producer based in Nairobi who seeks out stories that enable him to engage in socio-political spaces. His work on civic literary projects in music, nonfiction, and fiction has allowed him to connect with artists around the world. He's co-founder of LBX Africa, a Kenyan production company that service-produced the 2018 Oscar-nominated short fiction film Watu Wote. Soko's first feature documentary film, Softie, is premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2020. We'll start the discussion tonight with Cornelius, Boniface, and Sam, and we encourage everyone to participate by making comments in the chat and submitting questions through the Q&A box. And finally, please take a moment to type where you're joining us from in the chat. We love finding the diaspora in our audience. So thank you for joining us, and I'll let you take it away, Cornelius.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you all who are joining us on Zoom. And thank you, Sam and Boniface, for also joining us. They're joining us really early in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. So especially grateful that you made it. And Boniface is on a journey, so in his car, so especially additional thank you for that. So I thought I would begin. Boniface, by the way, you're muted. I thought I would begin with Sam and ask you, how did this project come about with Boniface? because Boniface, as we know, is somebody who's a internationally known photojournalist, and so I was
Yeah.
curious how you came to this project. Was it originally about him? Was it about him and the election, or did it change over time?
Um, so thanks again, Cornelius, for having us and for, sharing the film and, congregating people. And I thank MoAD for, allowing us to have this conversation about the film. So we actually met Boniface, I think it's about to be 8 years ago,
Oh.
when so Boniface runs this, co-founded and was running this artistic space called Power 254. And it's a space that, trains, congregates art and activists who seek to, be part of social change. And around the same time, there was this idea of developing an activist manual, which we could just share online and have inspire and, have a lot of people who want to speak out to do something something that they could use to, say, how do you put a protest together? So when we're having this conversation with Boniface, he was like, yeah, you guys can, we could film something and we could, put something out over a short period of time. But then one protest became another protest and another protest, and then it kind of morphed into this narrative, which you do see, you do see the sacrifices that he's he engages in, that not only speak to what he's trying to do or achieve for the country, but you also see the sacrifices that at home, like with his family, especially his wife and children. And so it became like this story questioning how far or what people need to do to, and how far they love, your love for your country vis-a-vis your love for your family. And, the journey became a 7-year journey, 8-year journey that ended up culminating in the film.
I forgot I wanted to let the people who are online know how to see the film too. You can go to softiefilm.com, which tells you how to watch it, stream it, because it's also for people who are members of PBS. They can see it via Passport, and there are other places listed there too. Another place is the distributor in the U.S., IcarusFilms.com, and also I think probably on IcarusFilms.com, they'll be able to tell you other virtual spaces where the film can be watched. You know, the way things are with COVID, it's theaters as well as on streaming, sort of a mixture of ways that people can see it. So I was curious about the challenges of raising support for it over a 7-year period. Could you reveal something about that for us?
It was hard. It's very hard. I think it's helped that the fundraising was done over, again, kind of a very similar long period of time. In the beginning, we were very lucky to receive some support from Just Films and the Ford Foundation, who at the time were supporting the short film that was going to be on YouTube. However, again, we're very lucky that they were okay with us, making the film larger and growing the film larger, and actually came back with additional funding towards the end. But we were also, we're also lucky to engage with partners like, the Doc Society, and we got into this pitching forum called the Hot Docs Forum, which also just unlocked a lot more people whom we engaged with, including PBS POV, who just, who just came to us on the lunch line after our pitch and they were like, we want this film. We also just the same thing with the BBC, but the film in itself was like a big collaborative effort, not only from a Kenyan standpoint, with my co-producer, Tony Kamau, We Are Not the Machine, but also with the incredible Canadian production company, I Still Film, who we just eventually kind of worked out something that, you know, just gave the film so much life.
So the film was broadcast this past fall on PBS on the POV series, which is one of the reasons why it's still available on Passport. And I will mention that the film is under consideration for an Oscar nomination. We'll know soon. So, and that would be great too, and it's certainly deserving of that. I wanted to, for those certainly who have seen the film, and I hope most people have already, they'll see that you as filmmakers had intimate access to Boniface and his family. So what was that whole process like for you? And maybe Boniface can also talk about how he negotiated to open his life and his home to this film production. How did that go?
I'd let Boniface go.
You're a mute. Mute. Yeah. Thank you.
Good morning from Nairobi, and thank you for having us. So it not began like a film. We were not doing a film, so there was no way it's gonna get that access and come to my house. But what started actually as a project to do an activism manual became an everyday conversation about what are you doing today, and you'd come and see that I'm planning a protest, but around me was my wife, my kids, and we were all like busy doing their own things, but in the same house. And I realized, wait a minute, there's a story here that yes, you go to a protest, which could be like a 1 hour, 2 hour, or a 5 hour event. Then you're back home, but where do you go back home to? So what happens before, behind the scenes when you're planning a protest, and what happens afterwards? And so that's how it came to be. But I think beyond doing the film or doing that production, we became friends. And when you become friends with someone, you share your challenges, you share your frustrations, because you see him every day.
Yeah.
And so, so through that conversation and through what he was able to see on his film and other things, he was able to see that there was a bigger story than just a protest manual.
So was there a time when you didn't even notice the crew was there filming?
Yeah, it became part of my life every day. As it became like an extension of what you were doing, and it was never in my mind. I watched the film for the first time a month before it was released, and I never got involved. I never saw the footage. I never saw anything until it came out. So it said, "I trust you, and I trust you're going to be respectful." And yes, and that's how it came to be.
Okay, so I just can imagine. I mean, I know I'm thinking a lot of films where people have really access to people's lives, but there's also times when people say, "Okay, no,
I did that a couple of times. I did that, and I regret. But there's things that I didn't want him to show. I'll tell him switch off, because we would have very deep discussions. We would have a conflicted discussions, and so I'd feel like he's like he's in a private space, like he's in a bedroom, and he shouldn't be there. And so I'll tell him, you cannot do this. And when I look back, I'm like, it should have documented, it should have been done, because when I watched the film, it was beautiful. But you see, at that particular moment and how I was feeling, I couldn't let him see me that way. I don't cry. I rarely cry. Like one of the hardest things for me to do is cry. And so I don't think of anything of me crying. I'm not sure. I'm also a very spiritual person, and I told him he can't come to church with me. I don't want him to be in my space where I'm worshiping God, which is a very private thing to do, and I don't do that space. So there's a place where I drew the line and say, yes, I love what you're trying to do. I love how you're trying to portray, but the things that I can't show the world because they're just personal. And so there's that conflict. Now and then I would say, no, you can't do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And just, I think to add on that, I think it speaks to a lot of history where we, I think the way African stories and Black stories are being portrayed, there's kind of a loss of dignity in which our stories are told. And that's something I think that was inherently was there in terms of how do we tell this story in a way that is highly respectful to not only the people you're filming, but also the people you're telling it to. Because we come from a history where our stories are told by those who don't understand the context which we're living in, and don't understand where our experiences and our lives. So it was important, I think, where, again, thank you so much, my friend, for allowing us to your space and allowing us to, and trusting us to walk that journey, so that we can kind of show evidence that it's possible to tell our films with dignity and with respect, and still speak to very important and powerful issues.
Yeah, I mean, there were times you answered the question, but I was thinking that Sam and the team was not there, that Boniface was filming, or Njeri was filming, but that didn't happen. So, but there is that amazing scene where Boniface, you mentioned to Njeri that you're running for Parliament and on camera for the first time, and I mean that was quite amazing. I mean yeah. And was there any discussion about that scene, or and it just had to be in, or just because it was quite candid?
No.
I wasn't planning to say it. The way you think that I'm getting a voter's card, and once I do that, I'm going to go home and talk about where I'm going to buy. But I realized I had a moment to tell her in those eyes. Actually, I never noticed that it was being recorded, but also I thought, because there's a couple of friends, not only the filmmakers, because I got a couple of friends to come and register in Sarai. Many of them, I thought, let me make the announcement. So by the time we get home, it will be an easier transition. She'll have thought about it, because when you tell her publicly, she'll have to control her reaction. And so I think it was a form of entrapment. It was like I'm trying to trap her. It was like a casual conversation, like, oh, you know what? The same way she told me she wants to have another baby in a conversation without saying she really wants to have another baby. So I ambushed her, because I thought if I tell her at home, it's going to become like this very long-winded discussion. But if I just mention I'm going to buy, then I walk away, then we can talk about it much, much later. And she'll have processed, and she'll out there publicly, and she'll be very, very composed. And yes. But she didn't take it kindly. I think I'm still not forgiven for how
we see that, yes.
Yeah, she didn't take it kindly.
So now, when you got into the electoral campaign and also the demonstrations and the like, where, well, it got very dangerous for you and your family. So, what was that? Sam, did you anticipate that when you went into the film? How did that affect the film and the filmmaking, being in danger too?
Boniface's life is always dangerous. Like, it's from the first time. I think the first time we met, he was actually beaten really badly, and then a couple of other times before that, he was, he's been arrested. Like, a lot of things you go through that process, but a lot of the time it was always contained in his life and the work that he does. So I don't think any of us anticipated that it was going to trickle into his family, and that his family are going to come, are going to be in danger. So, and he can speak more to this, but that's not something I think you even want to think about, because it's you're like, how, why? Like, there's absolutely no reason. But when it happened, I think that period was perhaps probably one of the most scariest periods of my life. And because you're always worried of, is he gonna be okay? Are they gonna be okay? Yeah, I'm really happy that, you know, kind of everybody just came back and it turned out well. But yeah, it's not a period that you look back to and you're like, yeah, you know, yeah, it's a very scary period.
Boniface, did you think, you know, having somebody filming you constantly was a way of ensuring your safety? Do you ever think of that?
No, the police will still beat you up or kill you even if there's a camera, so that doesn't stop anyone from doing that. I think the beauty of documenting that was to show people what really happened and what people go through when they're trying to do clean politics and the sacrifice that families go through. But cameras don't stop the police from harming you. I got shot in front of a TV crew, like there were about 10, 15 people recording, and I still got shot. So the brutality that is in this country and the level of impunity is such a level where they don't really care who's watching. I think the only thing that I did not expect that happened, and I'm happy my family said, is that the threats moved from me being threatened to them threatening my kids and my wife. And because they realized I was not being intimidated, I was not scared, and they thought, how do you scare this man to another level? And so they scared us. My family left. I also left the country, and I almost thought of never coming back to the country. I thought of looking for political asylum. I was in the US for a couple of months, but I realized my heart was still so low to come back home. So I came back home. But that was the whole idea. And I'm not the first one. The guys who have left this country, similar tactics scare you, you leave and you never come back. Because when you leave this country and you go to a first world country, things are working, you don't have to watch your back. There are systems and you feel like you're very, very safe. But what that does to the work that you're trying to do, it harms the work you're doing, it harms your reputation. Because when you come back, people will say, oh, you see now, you tell us to go and protest, but when you're in trouble, you can leave the country and can flee the country. All about us who work with you and fight with you. So that happened that time. I don't think it's going to ever happen again. If I ever find any more threats on my life or my kids' life, we'll never live again. And so we came to that conclusion. We said because the 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 people who want you to leave, every time you leave the country, they feel like they're winning the game because they see it as a game. So I I left the country and we left the country and we came back, but we never living again.
One of the comments that I saw is coming from Darithi in Berkeley, who really liked the film, is also talking about the bravery of you and particularly Njeri for being, you know, the courage of that's evident from the film and her activism as well. I wanted to ask about that and the family going into exile into New Jersey, and you know, that's, I mean, it's very well rendered, and you know the how you miss each other and how you find a way to communicate with each other over this period. But for Sam, that was, for the production, that must have presented incredible challenges because you were filming in Kenya and in the United States. So tell us a little about that, please.
When everything, I think when everything happened, and it happened so quickly, like it wasn't like a journey of a couple of months or something. Everything just happened like immediately. And on one aspect, of course, you want everybody to be safe. At the same time, there's something is thrown to you that you totally did not expect, where you need to, of course, find funding to go film in the US. And then at the same time, you need to keep going filming in Kenya. And I remember at that time, we were absolutely broke. Like because we'd already been filming up to that point for a couple of years. And and it took a bit of courage to some of the supporters of the film to be like, okay, this is happening, it's great, we're gonna front you some money, just see where it takes you. And I think that just by going to the US, and like Boniface said, it wasn't only about, you know, saying a film team, or in this case, like myself going to the US to film. I was a friend of the family. So when you go to see them, it was a familiar face was coming, and a familiar face who had news of Boniface's campaign. Because one thing that you see in the film is his wife wasn't present in the campaign, and Boniface wasn't there in the US. So there was this there was this thing of like, oh, so how is everything going on this other side? And then how's, you know, because Boniface is, as you can see even from the film, when Njeri says that he doesn't express himself a lot in regards to how he actually feels. So she'll be like, how is he actually doing in the campaign? And I think that kind of helps someone, you know, keep going and believing that their path is in the right way, and just, I think that the idea that it is important to document our narratives and our stories, so that when you come back and you tell people this actually happened, they experience it and they see it. Because a lot of the time people, because, you know, when someone thinks that Boniface was running for political office, and a lot of the time political office, people running for political office in Kenya, it's not only dangerous, but it's very expensive. And the way he was running his campaign was totally different with any predecessor or the people that he was running up against. So when you tell people that this is what happened, people don't believe you. They think you're, you know, you're coming up with some of this information. But because we were there to film it, it added evidence like that, you know, not only for our generation, but for future generations to see that this is how things run and this is why things need to change.
Okay, all right, that's awesome. So part I wanted to ask, well, you all may have heard that we had a recent series of elections in the United States, you know, and you know, there are certainly similarities, but and certain differences. And you explained it in the film about how voters don't trust politicians, and they expect to be paid for their vote, or what am I going to get out of this, because I'll never see you again if I say I'm going to support you. So did you, Boniface, do you think your campaign helped change that or had an impact on the way people saw politics?
No, it did. So I was one of the first person of my generation to ask people to fund my campaign and to vote for me. So I was going out there every single day asking people, please fund my campaign and please vote for me. And so I changed the way people think about politics, because in the past, it's normally you go look for a lot of money that you steal or sell something or take a loan, come invest in bribing voters, and then when you get elected, you recoup your money by doing shady business in parliament. And I told them I'm going to become a public servant. I'm going to work for you. So if you fund my campaign, I'm going to be accountable to you. And I've changed that. After we did that campaign of using mobile money for donations, like Cash App, where guys would send me money to fund my campaign, I was also able to, I saw one of the presidential candidates even opened his own mobile money platform to get money from people. And then the way we ran the entire campaign, from doing door to door and promising clean politics by having a manifesto, which my opponents did not have. And then the day after I lost the elections, I went back to the road and removed all my campaign posters. I cleaned up. And that meant that even the government, people would not go clean up your campaign posters. They said, you can run and run a clean campaign, and you can actually run with integrity intact. And when you leave, even if you lose or win, you come out with integrity intact. Normally, people avoid going into politics and say, it's very dirty, you have to play by the rules, but you came up with our own rules of doing things. And so even if we did not win the actual votes, like we did not get elected, but we showed people a new way of doing things. So there's not a single person in this country who say can't buy because they don't have money. I was able to raise over $150,000 from 8,000 unique strangers, people that I've never met in my life.
Wow.
But they gave me money because they believed in the vision that I had for the area where I was buying. So there's that. So we're asked when I got involved in politics, it is very transactional. You meet a voter, you pay them, and you buy their vote. Then they vote for you because they never see you again. Say, just give me what you're gonna give me now. That's where you say, give me a bribe right now, because I know if I elect you, I'll never see you again. But I said, no. You give me your money, you give me your vote, because after you elect me, I'm going to come back and work for you. And I'm gonna buy again in next year's election, and then do the same thing. I don't have money. I'm not a rich guy. I'm gonna say this is my campaign budget. This is what I want to do. Let's work together, because it's about public service. And why would I bribe you to vote for me unless I'm going there to make money? It's not a business. Yeah.
So the party that you formed, is it still active? And part one of the question, and two, it sounded like you were giving a hint of maybe doing it again, running for parliament.
Yes. So the
again.
political party, the political party is very strong. We're in the process of actually trying to change a couple of things, and starting April this year, we're going to start training young politicians and aspiring politicians on how to vie, how to run a clean campaign. We actually want to do a manual for campaigning the clean way. So, and yes, how to do it again, because the first time that happened, and maybe this time I'm going to win. And the other thing you have to realize that our elections, the outcome was disputed, and the presidential elections they were overturned in the Supreme Court.
Oh.
But the same tactics that are actually used to mess that particular election was used all the way down. So when I talk to people and they say, you did not lose, we voted for you, you lost to the system. Because the system could not allow me to get into parliament. So I'm hoping that we can actually overthrow the system as well in the coming elections to ensure that no matter what they do, I still get elected.
When are the next election?
So I'm very optimistic about it. Yeah.
When are the next election?
2022, next year.
So you should let people know who on the line here who want to perhaps support you, how they can do that. And we can put it in the chat.
Okay. I'll do that.
Okay.
I'll do that. Yeah.
So has a film been screened in Kenya, and what's been the reaction?
Yes. So we premiered initially, as we premiered at Sundance, and our initial goal was to, immediately kind of come to Kenya. But then COVID happened, and we had to push the launch, which eventually happened in October last year. And it was interesting because we wanted it to happen in the theater in some shape or form, primarily because we wanted not only the film to be seen for what it's talking about, but to be seen as a cinema and something that you can experience. And we were lucky that around the same time, there was easing of restrictions in Kenya, and we could actually premiere in some theaters. And what the distributors started out to be like, they only wanted us to release it for like only 2 weeks and kind of see how it goes. We were eventually there for over 7 weeks. And at the end of the year, we're the biggest film in the Kenyan cinemas in 2021.
Congratulations.
Yep. And what that did is it kind of pushed and encouraged us to find new ways to keep sharing the film. So now we're available digitally in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria, and South Africa. And because of, just absolutely crazy things that's been happening in Uganda, we've been trying to make the film available there for free because their experiences and one of the candidates' experience, Bobi Wine, totally mirrors Boniface's experiences. And there's, I think it's important, even as storytellers, to have camaraderie with the people and be like, even if you're finding motivation, even if you're like, even if it's just for you to believe that it's possible to make a difference, we want to continue to do that and use the film to do that. So we're highly encouraged by the support reactions that we have in Kenya, and hopefully in the course of the year, once things level out better with COVID, we'll share the film with a lot more people and have a lot more people engage with the film.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I was going to ask Boniface about Uganda, but there was also a question I forgot to ask. I was dying to ask, is the woman whose name I'm forgetting, who was your campaign
Hadija.
manager. Yes.
Yeah.
Say, what's she doing
Hadija.
now? Hadija. Yeah, Khadija.
Yeah. Adija's doing great. She started this organization that helps the women. I think actually inspired by some of the women that she were meeting during the campaign, in kind of formalizing their food business, and it's really grown, and she continues to be a firebrand in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
she's a great campaign manager. She like whipped the candidate into shape.
She was my disciplinarian. She made sure that I ate, that I went to bed at a particular time. She ran my life, and I was telling her the other day that if she comes back to my campaign team, I think you're going to win. But still thinks that it's still a very long way because of the way voters relate with politicians.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, it was very transactional. So I hope that she's going to come back and together we can win that seat. But she's doing very well.
Okay, good. So at some point there's someone who Cheryl Fabio, who wanted to say hello to you, who I think came who came to Kenya with a group of young people from Oakland. And
okay.
Yeah, what is I'll ask Elizabeth to read back the message before we leave.
I can read it right now.
Okay, yeah, what did she say?
It says, Sam, you did a wonderful job keeping Boniface and the struggle both in terms of his work and family so human. Boniface, I met you at the workspace with a group from Oakland, Our Joy. Love the film, so glad to see you are well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask Boniface about is it Pawa254.org and what your art plus activism artivist organization. Please tell us about that.
So it's a physical space in Nairobi, where as a photographer I was trying to get into activism, and there was no mentorship and there was no one to teach me how to do it. And so I came up with this space where I met Sam as well. That's how we met. Where anyone who's an artist, a photographer, a filmmaker, graffiti, a poet, a musician can come and sharpen their skills in doing their art form, but at the same time learn how to involve social political issues or social political tones in their work. So it's a place. It's like a place where you come and get your ideology right. Like how do I communicate very heavy messages in my art? As I make my money, I still try and make a difference. So it became this community that has grown. I no longer work there. My wife Njeri runs the space right now, but it was just a collective of all these people who use the art form to make a living, but also use the art form to do political expression and to agitate for social change. And so power actually means power in English. That's like it's a corruption of it's a slang word for power, it's PW, but it's now power, the English word. And then the 254 is a country code, so it's part of Kenya. It's the whole idea of the Kenyans coming together to create art for social change.
Okay. And the website is pawa254.org. Yeah.
Yes, .org.
Yeah. And I want to ask you also, I know that you're part of Africans Rising, and that as part of the coordinating collective, and maybe part of that you went to Uganda recently during their elections. And Sam had talked about the film being useful for the campaign, the insurgent campaign for president in Uganda. So there are people online here who I think who want to know something about what you experienced during that time, during the election in Uganda.
So I went to Uganda to assess the situation on the ground. And if you go to Uganda even today, it looks like a war zone. 7 years been in power for 37 years, and he was going for a next term. Like the man has never stopped running. And the majority of Ugandans are young people, and they want to change, and they believe in this young politician called Bobby Wine, who's a personal friend. As when Museveni realized he was going to lose the elections, he decided to militarize the entire city. He called back Uganda's troops in Somalia. He called his Uganda back from Somalia. They came and occupied Kampala. They put tanks on the streets. They put Humvees on the street. They put all manner of military vehicles on the streets of Kampala. And then 2 days before the election, they shut down mobile money and shut down the internet. And he did this for two reasons. Because when you don't have mobile money, you can't pay your agents, can't pay your people who are on the ground to collect data. And when you have no internet, people can't record and share what's really happening on the ground. And then Bobby Wine supporters, over 2,000, when I was in Uganda at that particular time, over 2,000 of his supporters have been arrested and detained. It was illegal to wear a red beret, which is a symbol of struggle for Bobby Wine. So Museveni used military might to go after a candidate who was just trying to run for president. Since then, the man is under house arrest after the election. Bobby Wine was detained because he disputed the outcome of the election, and Museveni knew very well that if Bobby Wine leaves the house and goes to the streets to demonstrate, there'll be many more people. And Museveni, the only way Museveni can stop people from protesting to ensure that their leader is not available publicly. And then the internet is back up, but it's still very slow. So he has tried to stifle any form of protest from the outcome of this election, which is it was stolen election. He basically rigged the election, which he has done for a long while. But being a military dictator, he understands that the one way to stop people from organizing is stop the flow of information. You arrest the leader and the leadership, then you have no one to lead the protest. So Bobby Wine is still being detained. Now he can access his lawyers, but he can't leave his house.
And that's clearly human rights violations and all kinds of violations. And so, and again, people, I think a lot of people on this watching us would like to be more informed and maybe lend their support. So would the best thing to be for people to go to Africans Rising, to their site, to get more information, or whatever else you could suggest that people could do to keep themselves informed and send their support?
So, yeah. So one of the things you can do actually is follow Bobby Wine on Twitter and see what he's updating and what he's saying, and just vocalize and reshare what he's actually sharing. I know there are a couple of hashtags about Uganda, and you can use those hashtags, and then you can actually tag a leader who can quickly do something about it. Every time you tweet, you can tag Kaguta Museveni, and tag the UN, and tag the US President Joe Biden, and tag people who fund Uganda. Because Uganda, like 40% of the Uganda's health budget comes from foreign partners. The Uganda military is trained by the UK, the EU, and the US. So which means as long as they keep on funding this dictator, this man will never leave power. So if we can target where the money is coming from, then maybe Museveni might actually hand over power. The whole idea is actually, I don't think Museveni is gonna go without a fight, and that's the reason why he needs to have there's a spotlight on him, because even now Bobby Wine is moving to court to challenge the outcome of the elections, but we know that the courts are not free and fair. So the only way to get this one to be accountable is for him to feel there are many more eyes watching him across the world, not just in Uganda, but everyone is watching and everyone is looking at what he's doing, and that will help. Last year November, there was a protest. Bobby Wine was arrested, and there was a protest, and over 100 people were killed in one day, shot dead by the government of Uganda. And so the fear is, if there's any more protests in the coming weeks, same thing is going to happen. But if there's public pressure that Museveni knows that the world is watching Uganda and the world is watching him, then he might not kill people. He let people just protest and go home.
The leadership of Kenya has connections with Uganda and the leadership there. Can you talk about that?
Yes, they do. So the leadership of Kenya, our President Uhuru Kenyatta, is a businessman. So he's doing business in Uganda, and so he doesn't want to jeopardize his business interests. So the self has taken over the national interest. So where us as Kenya is like a big brother to Uganda because they import most of the things through Kenya, and we're a business person of Uganda. Our government was the first to congratulate Museveni win on that disputed election because our president is a businessman. His family bank is in Uganda. His family, they have a dairy company that sells milk and cheese products and yogurt. They're selling milk in Uganda. So he's doing so much. So the personal is so conflicted that he cannot call out Museveni. And regionally where we are, so there's Tanzania, Magufuli, who stole his election. You have Rwanda, Kagame, who steals elections. You have Burundi, where there is violence. Then you have Congo. Then you have Somalia. Then you have Ethiopia. Actually, in this particular region, Kenya is the most stable of the economies. But even as we also have stolen elections. So I think it's an East African thing where it's a group of dictators who just steal elections every time there's an election.
I know in the past the U.S. has supported Museveni, and quite a few of the governments and leaders you mentioned just now.
Yeah.
So we have our work cut out for us here to get our government to do the right thing. I mean, the past government was very nasty towards Africa. I mean, verbally and every other way. And this current one, well, it's a question mark. So,
yeah.
But
they still do. So the reason why the U.S. supports Museveni is the one who has troops in Somalia, like the largest number of troops in Somalia, trying to stabilize the country. So because of the war against terror, they're willing to look the other way when Museveni does human rights violation back home.
So I want to ask, I mean, this was Sam, because this is such an amazing achievement and took a while to complete and finish, and is still with you. But filmmakers always have another project or more than one project that they're thinking of doing. So are you able to share some of your ideas about what your next things you're going to be working on are?
Yes. So I've been, because of the experience with Softie and the journey we've had with Softie, I'm currently working to support and give support to other filmmakers, first-time filmmakers in Kenya, South Sudan, and Zimbabwe, in bringing their stories to the fore. At the same time, I'm co-directing a film that I'm following one of the world's boldest experiments on universal basic income, and just trying to figure out whether, just increase and have more conversations about greater equality, wealth equality, and how to reduce poverty, and whether universal basic income is a solution. So we need to keep going and keep engaging in narratives that hopefully will bring change in some shape or form.
So this is in Kenya? Somebody who's doing this in Kenya?
This is in Kenya, yeah.
Okay, great. So Elizabeth, have there been other questions that I haven't been able to see? And while Elizabeth is looking, is there anything else either one of you want to say about the current situation in Kenya I mean, I did have a question for Boniface about, because you're a journalist, the situation for journalists on the continent. And I did a quick search, and according to the International Journalist Organization, that Kenya was doing pretty well, although you may disagree with that and Uganda, but it seemed to be like whenever there are elections, that's when the danger happens to journalists. But yeah, what's what do you think the situation is in sort of in general in the region that you're in for a journalist?
So we have a somewhat free media. The only thing that makes our media compromised is the ownership. So the biggest media houses are owned by politicians and businessmen. And I think there's only 1 or 2 radio stations that are owned by women, but the majority are actually owned by men. And these men have a lot of interest in real estate, in hotel industry, in transport. They have so much business interest. So they ensure that when they cover news or when their papers they own run stories, they're not overly critical of the government because the government will punish them in other ways. One of the biggest advertisers in the country is the government. And if they find that your paper is not favorable to the government or your story or you're always exposing corruption, then they target advertising. They say you can't advertise in this particular newspaper, which eventually means that as long as media relies on government advertising and relies on government regulators to make money, then they're going to be very soft in their approach so they don't lose the bottom line. The media in the country does not exist to inform and educate people. It exists to make money. So their first loyalty is to profit, not truth. Now, what has helped us as a country is the access to social media and internet penetration. What that means, you have a lot of young citizen journalists who don't care about profit and who just want to write stories about what they're seeing every day. And that has actually helped make the media do their work, because now if everyone's talking about a story, the media is forced to go and cover that story. So there's that advantage. And that's the same reason why in Uganda and Tanzania, the government shut down the internet. Because they knew even if we tell the media not to air this story, they won't air the story. But there's a couple of young kids across the country who will just tell these stories without any fear. So do you have a free media? No. Do we have the space to express ourselves? Yes, there's a space. People get arrested for exposing the truth, but no one has been jailed yet. And that's the beauty. The laws protect us. So you'll get arrested. I've been arrested so many times, but I've never been convicted. I have a couple of court cases, but there is a way that they do this to frustrate you, but you can never get jailed for telling the truth. So the trend is break you in other ways. So media is just there, but it's the same thing with American. I think it's a global problem where most media houses have to rely on advertising to be able to make a profit and pay the salaries. And as long as the biggest advertiser is government or people or big pharma or gun lobbyists or whoever it is, then ensure that your work does not harm those people because you need their money. So if only we could have journalism that exists that doesn't seek to make profits, then we would progress. But it's very hard to, in a capitalistic world, to think about a media that just seeks to inform and entertain and educate instead of misinformation and other things.
So is Pawa 254 one of sort of the incubators for people who are sort of citizen journalist activists?
Yeah, we have trained a lot of journalists actually. We used to run media platforms, but it's very expensive and it's very risky at the same time, because when you get that space, you have to cover the very, very hard stories. So we have done that before. I still do it. We have a platform called Samo Kweli, which means say the truth, which we expose stories and we run stories. My wife just did a collaboration with the BBC called Baby Snatchers about a cartel of doctors and medical workers who steal and sell babies in Nairobi and in the country. So there's that. But eventually, and you're asking what else I have to say, eventually all of us have to become storytellers. We have to tell our stories ourselves. I'm so sure there's something that you know in your community that you're the only one who's an expert or who has an opinion about it. We all must speak the truth and say these things, because the bullies are more louder than us. And if you allow the bullies to continue talking, then you'll never be heard. You saw the bullies did in America in the last 4 years. You see what the bullies did at the Capitol building. Those guys, bullies have no shame. bullies have no decorum, bullies have no social responsibility. And so we have to become more socially responsible and become more active citizens and play our part. So when you watch Softie, don't think about Boniface Mwangi and Kenya. Think about you and your community. What are you doing about it? What is that one issue? Is it homelessness? Is it unemployment? Is it poverty? Is it immunization? There are many things in every community, wherever we are and watching from, that we can do. Tell guys, Africa doesn't need saviors. We don't need American saviors. We don't need to fly all the way to Kenya to come and help to show us how to wipe our asses. No. Stay where you are and play a role in your own country. And maybe globally and collectively we can make the world a better place. So if we all play our role wherever we are, we can heal a broken world. But when we look at the problems in Africa is suffering, and then you want to come and save Africa. No, yeah, we can save ourselves. We live here, we work here, we speak the language. This is our life. So go back to your community and say, how do I fight racism? How do I ensure that police are not brutal and they're not killing a non-citizen? There's things you can do wherever you are in the world. So play your role and become an active citizen in your community first. Before you start exporting your manners to the other parts of the world and your ideas and philosophy to the other parts of the world, do it local.
Very true. Excellent. Yeah.
So there are a couple questions in the Q&A
Okay.
box. I'm going to combine two of them. So based on ethnic divisions in national politics in Kenya, do you think a federal system of government like there is in Ethiopia might be good for Kenya? And then follow that with, has there been any improvement in intertribal relations in Kenya since the film was made?
So Ethiopia is at war right now.
Yes.
So federalism and not has not helped.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Kenya has something almost that is federalism. It's called county government. It's like what you have federal government in the US. That has actually helped to reduce the tension because, which means Kenya has 47 presidents because you have a national president, but also have governors who are like many presidents in terms of counties. Tribalism is still a very big problem in the country. Our politicians mobilize along tribes, and so there's always the ethnic divisions. Actually, there's a possibility that this combination is going to be very violent because the tribal warlords and the kingpins, the only way for them to mobilize is going back to tribe, and that's their default settings, and they've gone back to that again. So have things become better since the film was done? I think it's become worse because now you have succession where the president is leaving, and then the deputy president who is supposed to succeed him, they're fighting, and so now they've gone back to, and when they start fighting, they go back to their communities and say, my community wants this, my community wants this. And so, but I hope that at the end of the day, that the people who vote and the people who fight, who are poor people, will not fight for these people. Because those guys don't fight; they just incite and they never fight themselves. They let us kill each other.
They watch while it burns.
Say it again.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying they love watching us while everything is burning.
So they like the fire and then they run away. They're the ones who start. They come and find the fire, and then they stand back and watch.
Yeah,
because after we have killed each other, they come and sign a peace agreement and they shake hands. That's what they do all the time. The big men just shake hands and say, let's share the government. But after thousands have died for nothing, in vain.
Okay, and several people have asked how your children are doing now, Boniface, and particularly a question for Sam. How did you manage to film the family with 2 adults and 3 kids in that little car when they returned from the airport?
When you tell them how the kids are doing.
No, the kids are great. They love it. We took a holiday, like a family break from everything this year, and we moved to Mombasa, which is like coastal city of Kenya. And so we are gonna be there for the next 2 months. And it's sunny. They swim every day. We just resting from everything. So the enjoyment. So they're bigger now. Our last born is 9. Our firstborn is going to high school. He's actually in high school. He's in year 9. So they're doing very well. and my daughter thinks she's a celebrity.
Yeah, there's when we started making the film, I think as the journey of making the film happen, I had to become a friend to everyone in the family. Like I have a different relationship with everyone in the family. So when they were in the car, I'm actually used to sitting at the back of that car with the kids. So it makes it very easy when you're filming. So, but yeah, I think that they're used to having me around without just
So
totally.
you're able to squeeze yourself in the cracks.
Yes, I'm able to mix myself in the cracks. Yeah.
Is there any more questions, Elizabeth?
There's one more question. Do we have time, Sam?
Yeah, we got for one time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do one question.
The last question is, to what extent do Kenyans who acquire higher education in foreign countries actually return and contribute their skills to the country's advancement? Is there a brain drain? Is there an investment drain? How well received are those who return to Kenya or other African countries?
That's a big question.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, so the biggest brain drain in the continent up in the 80s and 90s, we lost a lot of doctors, professors, and professionals who went and never came back. And the reason why they never come back is that they're not accepted here. And if they come back, there are no jobs for them. So it's understandable that if you leave and you find another job, they just go and work. I think the biggest drain we have actually is not even human resource. It's actually illicit financial flows. The countries that work, the companies that work on this continent, they don't pay taxes. They have tax havens and they do tax evasion. We get, for every dollar we get, $10 are taken out of this continent. We have countries like Switzerland now. There was a law that they were trying to pass a law in Switzerland that actually said that if you do business overseas and you do human rights violation or you environmental degradation, you should be charged in a Swiss court. But that motion was defeated. I think what you need to do, what you need much more, are the companies, because the biggest companies on this continent are foreign companies. The top 5 companies in Kenya are British. But do they pay fully taxes? No, they don't pay full taxes. They don't have best practices. They don't do things the way they would do them in their country. So ideally, what we'd really like as Africans is for countries that send their companies to come and work on this continent and should behave the same way they behave back home. If we have fair playing grounds, that even as Africans, you can access the market abroad, that you can actually sell things abroad, then it will actually help us and help. Sorry, I'm getting distracted because I'm parked at the gas station and they're discussing. Okay. So, so if there's a way we could actually fair trading policies, let them pay their full share of taxes, there are enough people who can work on this continent, and those who live can still live, and everything will be fine. It's good for us to also export talent abroad and good practices abroad as well.
So great, that's a great thing to end on, and I think maybe we could get Priority Africa Network to put something like that on the website for people in the West, for the U.S. to learn more about that and pressure with legislation around that. So Priority Africa Network. Thank you, Boniface Mwangi. And
thank you very much.
PAWA254.org. And Sam Soko, thank you very much. The SoftieTheFilm.com.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I know it's early for you. Have a great day for the rest of the day.
You too.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you.
Bye-bye.
I want to also thank our co-sponsor for today's program, Black Public Media, and our co-presenter, Priority Africa Network. And I just want to let people know that our next program in February, I put it in the chat, but we're going to be talking about the film How It Feels to Be Free. It's about trailblazing Black female entertainers, Lena Horne, Abby Lincoln, Diane Carroll, Nina Simone, Cicely Tyson, and Pam Grier, and will be in discussion with director Yoruba Richin. And that program will be on Sunday, February 21st at 5 p.m. And the film is currently screening on PBS American Masters, so please check that out. And then also, if you could take a moment to fill out our online survey and give us some feedback about tonight's program. And if you are able to support MoAD in any way that works for you, we appreciate all donations and support. So thank you all for being here with us tonight. Thank you, Sam and Boniface, for joining so early in the morning and on the road. And thank you, Cornelius, for your leadership and discussion. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Morning, night, whatever.
All right, bye.
Bye, Cornelius.